Alright, it's time to conclude Book 5 by reading these last 4 chapters. Chapter 5, Staff of Bones. First rule of combat. Always have a plan of escape ready in case you get into trouble. Second rule of combat. Understand when escape is not an option. Third rule of combat. Don't put yourself in a position where you get flanked on multiple sides. Fourth rule of combat. Don't exhaust yourself before the conclusion of a fight. Fifth rule of combat. Don't die. Unfortunately not as much as I thought. The skeletons were smart enough to keep their distance as they came into sight. Cursing, I began to run as fast as I could in an attempt to close the gap. The skeletal mage took this opportunity to send a volley of fire spells my way. My anger exploded, and I felt a turret rush fill me. Flames encircled my sides as I was hit. In the following moment, I was cleaving my weapon to recage one of them, shattering its body to bits. Not missing a beat, however, the other mage then unleashed a searing ray of arcane mana, clipping my shoulder. As I was about to retaliate against this impotent undead caster, an arrow suddenly pierced my foot, and I was pinned to the ground. Realizing the danger I was in, I raised my arm, and discharged my heaping ruin to free myself. Alleviated from the maladies afflicting me, I started off the archer that I left in error. Seeing me closing in, the skeleton released another arrow in my direction, which I sidestepped out of the way of. In a heartbeat, I was on top of the skeleton, senselessly barring with an onslaught of blows. When the archer was dealt with, I turned once more to look in the direction of the skeleton mage. Merely taking a couple of strides over to it, I simply cast my arm out, and knocked his skull off. I panted heavily before I grabbed one of the infusions that the healer had given me, and aptly made use of it. Slowly recovering, I started to hear a distinct sound of applause, a voice also mockingly shouting out, "Well done, well done." Checking my surroundings, I quickly spied the cloaked figure, but I could not see Aranion Gawaeil around our vicinity. Deciding to inquire as to his whereabouts, I asked, "Where's the general?" To this, I got the response, "Oh, as in Aranion Gawaeil. Well, the general's occupied, at least for a brief modicum of time. Likely he'll be back soon, but for now I think I'll entertain myself with you." A cold feeling immediately took hold of me, an evil smile appearing on the bottom of the shrouded face, the rest still hidden in shadow. I began to approach with my weapon drawn, but the inanimate entity then reached within his cloak and blinked away to a pile of shattered bones. I froze in place, feeling a dark sensation wash over me as an object was pulled out, something that I knew held great power, great and terrible. Attempting to discern what it was, I was able to make out a short thin staff, but not one that looked to me of any material I'd seen one constructed of before. Perhaps sensing my awareness toward the staff, the cloaked figure spoke again. "Oh, you don't seem to be a mage, yet you can feel his dark power, can't you? Bones are so interesting, you know," the cloaked figure started to opine. "They can tell you a lot about a person. You can learn their owner's identity, where and when they lived, how old they were when they died, the injuries and hardships they suffered, and so forth. Quite fascinating, really. Of course, studying them is quite frowned upon. Quite bothersome, really." The perplexing oddball coughed and wheezed a few times, then continued. "Some of the most peculiar bones I've come across can be found within my staff, and when I find some peculiar bones I like..." As the sentence trailed off, a chill went down my spine, and I could feel the dark intentions fully becoming engrossed on me. I watched as the figure made a brisk motion with the staff toward the reins of the ground. The bones then slowly organizing themselves, building into a towering mass to climb upwards. Limbs of all manner of terror and death sprouted out as a new bone giant came into existence. The Necromancer let loose a lethal chortle, then indicated to the bone giant that it was an enemy to be clobbered. Responding to the command, the bone giant turned towards me and lumbered in my direction. Looking to inflict the first blow, I charged forward and attempted to take out one of his legs, hoping to gain an early advantage. Much like before in Elvia, however, this bone giant would also bring about around its bones to rebuild itself, thus negating any disadvantage I sought to cause. In the next moment, I could do nothing. The abomination suddenly setting forth one of his limbs, catching me in the upper arm. The spikes and razor-sharp joints inflicted great pain as they ripped through, causing me much agony. In an attempt to take the initiative again, I pushed forward with a quick thrust, but was prevented from mustering all the physical force that I could. Hatred began to boil within me as I was fairly knocked about by heavy blows. Finally, I unleashed those built-up malicious energies into the bone giant and attempted to stun its movements. The bone giant floundered, my dark thoughts not interfering with it. Trying to attack me while under the pressure of my animosity, its attacks being slow and readable, and I was able to dodge them. Now on the offensive, I slashed heavily against the creature and started to overwhelm it. Again though, like in Elvia, a barrier of bones would form to protect it. Not the least bit discouraged, I relentlessly continued my attack until it eventually broke through. Unable to withstand my continual ferocity, its blows flew in all directions, and I tore through it from front to back. Now standing with the architect ahead of me, I could hear the bone giant behind me collapse, falling into a pile of bones once more. Chapter 6 Evil and Malice. There is truly no other way to describe the Necromancer that I met, but completely evil. One might consider the magic-hating Xingriff, those zealots I've written about in my earlier books, as evil. But even from those fanatics, I could at least feel they were trying to do it for noble reasons, despite how twisted those noble reasons might have been. This fiend of undeath, though, I can sense nary good intention from, and the actions undertaken seem to be only for the purpose of entertainment and amusement. As I felled the bone giant, the menace ahead of me started to clap once more. Very good. Well done. Quite the display. The Necromancer stated in a sinister tone. Your bones will truly be worth adding to my staff. Turning my head toward the wretch, I announced boldly, it will take more than a mere bone giant to kill me. The Necromancer, seemingly getting caught in thought to my statement, then replied, Bone giant. Quite the name. Of course, you seem to be misunderstanding something. The bone giant, as you call it, is not quite dead. Taking those words, I didn't have much time to react before I was walloped from the side. Snapping my eyes as to what had hit me, I immediately realized that the bone giant was indeed not defeated. The unliving colossus then stepped by me to come face to face with his maker, a simple movement of that dreadful staff telling it to pivot around. Viewing the bone giant once more, it appeared to have reassembled itself into a new barbaric arrangement. As the skirmish restarted, I could hear the voice of Necromancer cry out, These bone giants, as you call them, they are something else, are they not? I got inspiration for them from the Nargles when they fought with the Conclave in the Allure Wars. You see, few know of this, but the Nargles actually used necromancy to ultimately win that war. There was then some more wheezing and cackling from the coward, but I was more concerned with the current predicament. Somewhat exhausted from being a bone giant the first time, I now lacked the strength to overcome his defenses, and proceeded to slowly back away. As I tried to get some breathing room, I quickly analyzed the situation. The swirling barrier of bones were always circling the behemoth's body. I knew that I wouldn't be able to do any lasting harm as a result. Sooner or later, I would have to give battle again, and that was an engagement I would want to initiate on my own terms. I just needed to find an appropriate avenue of attack first. Distressingly, finding an opening was made more difficult as the Necromancer's prowling started again. These bone giants, as you so cleverly named, they can be formed in a variety of ways to kill, and as you can see they are quite durable. I'm actually quite thankful that you managed to rip through it as you did just now. I can already see ways in which I can improve my next one. Including a venomous praise, the gasping last resumed. It was quite infuriating. I'm not even sure why I remembered those damn worms so vividly. However, I would not be bested by Necromancer's bone giant, and decided I would make my final stand against it. I rushed in, and took a nimble swipe to knock away a few of his bones. Noticing that the bone barrier didn't prevent the damage, I quickly came to realize that the powerful defense had since dissipated. Sensing that I would have a brief moment before he would come back, I made a heavy strike that caved in his midsection, though again, the bone giant would shift his bones around in order to maintain itself. Not being deterred, I pressed forward and unleashed everything I could muster. The bone giant would not allow itself to be defeated so easily, however. Like I had done earlier, it shot forth from its limbs and caused me to get similar trauma to what I have sustained previously. Not allowing myself to be hampered, I let loose my heat beam rune and relieved the discomfort that I felt, the bone giant also now burning as I advanced forward. Seeing my runic action, the raspy voice of Necromancer then mused. Runes! Oh, I know! I'll grab some runes as the next one! What interesting ideas you're giving me! Still focused on my current opponent, I continued to hit the bone giant again and again, until finally it fell apart. Not sure if it would get up a third time, I continued to hack at the broken body until it was completely smashed apart. Somewhat forgetting about the one who assembled it though, I immediately felt my body go numb, and found ice forming all around me. Instantly immobilized, I darted my eyes all about, before spying the cold vapors swirling around the outstretched and sickly white hand. Slowly the bone-loving maniac approached me, coming around to my left arm where my heat beam rune was inscribed. Putting a hand under the chin of that mischievous grin, the Necromancer noted, "Not once, but twice you have defeated my bone giant. I suspected you might have been able to bring it down the first time, but bringing it down right after was quite unexpected. Now, I really have to wonder who you are. You appear to be a familiar to me, but what were you doing in Elvia? Curious." Circling to initially stand in front of me, before continuing around to my right side, the ninny intently looked me over while making sounds. Proceeding to stop, the Necromancer began to contemplate out loud. "Quite surprising seeing you use ruins. Are you a criminal, exiled from your force perhaps? Wait, what's this second rune you have?" While I couldn't see what was happening behind me, I could feel the intense staring at the rune return that was inscribed on the back of my neck. The following remark then rang out. "Ah, interesting. I shall learn design. Albeit, judging from the markings, it appears an ogre's handiwork was involved in the placement of this rune, if I'm not mistaken. Quite intriguing. I wonder what its purpose is for." Continuing to power over me for several moments, the wicked character came around toward my left arm again. I couldn't do anything just yet, but I could feel the arcane energy replenishing within my heat beam rune. All I needed was a mere moment before I could use it again. Then I could escape my icy imprisonment and deliver brutal justice for those lost in Elvia. Perhaps aware of my intent though, the fiend stopped and stated, "You are quite the oddity, aren't you? That said, you aren't much the conversationalist, so there's little reason for me to keep it alive. I can sell you your dead, or rather undead corpse, just as easily." I could sense the dark magic beginning to accumulate. Raising that hand up that had been used to freeze me, the Necromancer concluded by saying farewell to lore. Chapter 7. Powers of Undeath. Something that I've always wondered about is why people give names to inanimate objects. When General Gawaeil rescued me from a Necromancer, he would lose a hold of his blade at some point during a confrontation. Even now as I write this, the General frets over his lost sword, as if he's lost a loved one. While I can understand how he can get accustomed to a weapon, surely he can find another to use instead. Sensing that I need to act now, I activated the heat beam rune to melt the ice around me, and sent a surging blast of fire toward a Necromancer. As the malignant enemy fell back in flames, I took the moment to heat my weapon forward, only to pierce through nothing. Before I had a chance to see where the evil mage had gone, I was enveloped by a burst of hot flames from behind. I flipped around to see the Necromancer, sitting gently on fire, a joyous belly laugh escaping from his impertinent lips. My cruel foe then raised up an arm in a humiliating gesture, showing off the heat beam rune that has been used against me. Annoyed how easily it had just been read, I gripped my teeth and got ready to charge. Likely still anticipating what I wanted to do, the Necromancer then called forth all manner of undead. After hearing some more cackling, I felt the sharp pain cut through me as a dark beam of energy was fired, the spell fire bursting through a couple skeletons that had now stood between us. As I cringed in pain, I had little time to react as the unliving minions began to drive into me from all angles, including the skeletons, which seemed unfazed, despite certainly being hit. Infuriated, I began to strike at everything within reach, and hewed a path through the unliving up to their foul summoner. Coming face to face with their master, I was about to deliver a great blow, but then, with a simple wave of those hands, I felt a heavy force slam into my chest. Something dark pierced my mind, and try as I might, I could not resist it. I was sent careening backwards, slamming into a partially collapsed wall, my vision brilliant from the impact. The Necromancer cried out in amusement, before yammering on. "How pathetic you really are! Fighting is more than just hitting things with overwhelming force. You are truly powerful, but power in and of itself is meaningless. Your moves are too telegraphed, your attacks are easily countered, and you don't seem to have the slightest idea how it strikes in combat. Oh well, perhaps after I kill you, I'll just raise your remains as they are, and show you how to properly engage in a fight. Poetically, I could say those words struck me more than any wound inflicted on me that day, but that would fail to describe just how many spell blasts I would sustain. For every action I would make, the Necromancer would be 2 steps ahead, and for every mistake I would make, I would pay dearly. As I struggled to survive, I could feel my body beginning to grow colder. I knew that I could not continue on much longer. My desperation was perhaps just as noticeable as anything else in my opponent, who subsequently let loose a salvo of necromantic magic to finish me off. I collapsed one final time, unable to move, waves of cold and dark energy circulating throughout my body. It made me realize just how far the limits of my mortality could really go, all of how close to those limits I now was. My thoughts turned over to the past minutes of my life, remembering happier times before Spellblaze, when I lived in the forest when I felt forlorn. Simpler, more peaceful times to be sure. I didn't want to die, nor suffer where my plans this first individual would have for me. Yet, I could do nothing more now, as the villain approached to stand over me. Such a fruitless effort, Lore, the Necromancer repined. Perhaps with time, you would have become a noble hero of legend, but now you die. In the next moment, I could not describe to you the amount of pain I felt. Definitely magic would be discharged in my body, torturing every fibre of my being. As I anguished, my mind slowly began to black out, and I slowly inched closer and closer to death, or perhaps right to undeath. I might have been turned into a living atrocity right then and there, had General Gawaeil not managed to return just in time to interrupt that particular outcome. I don't know the specifics of what happened next, only that the General was somehow was able to extract me from the situation. Incredibly, I would endure long enough for a basic healing spell to be cast on me, enough to keep me alive until we returned to Elvia, where I could properly be treated. I briefly remember when I was initially recovering that I opened my eyes. I was laying in one of the medical beds back in Elvia, and I could see my husband in a nearby chair. I tried to call out to him, but instead let loose a scream, my body racked in pain from the many injuries I endured for so long. My husband would call for a healer, upon which I would lose consciousness again. The next time I woke up, I was in my own room, inside my own house. I could see a night sky outside a window, and my husband was asleep in his bed nearby. I called out saying his name, Owain. As he roused from his sleep and looked at me, an endless amount of tears would begin streaming down his face. In a cracked voice, I heard him say, "You're awake. You're still alive." He hurried over to me, putting his hands under me to embrace me tightly, while sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, I allowed him to cry, feeling I should hold back on crying as to what happened. I didn't know how long I would have been asleep, but I had a feeling that he had waited the entire time for me, waiting for a moment I would come back to him. Chapter 8. From the Brink of Death. Eventually I got the story from my husband, and found out the aftermath of the battle in detail. The Necromancer had perhaps allowed for General Gawaeil to retreat with me, if not just fled from the General's arrival. I was very close to death, but the healers worked tirelessly to stabilize my condition. This was not helped by my kind of affliction, and terrible injuries that had been wrought by those deathly necrotic spells. For countless days, I remained within the healing grounds, until being relocated to my own bed. At this point, a somber expression took hold of my husband's face, and I noticed his eyes looking in the direction of my covered body. As I lifted the bed sheets, I immediately understand why, seeing the blackened scars that were actually engraved into my skin. Meekly he told me that while the healers were sure I would live, the wounds inflicted would leave deformed scars that would never heal. For a moment I sat still as I contemplated what to say. Then smiled without hesitation. I looked up at my husband, pulled off the covers, and slowly made a stand. Discomfort surged through me as I did, and I swayed a bit as I rose, but I stood in front of my husband nonetheless. His eyes darted around and his mouth stammered, until I looked him in his eyes and made my way over to kiss him. Raising my head, I stated to him in a quiet tone, "I do not care how I look as long as you, Owain, still love me. That alone is enough for me to continue on." At this his face relaxed, as I slowly descended to kiss him once more. As I drew closer to him, held him in his arms, he quietly gave the response, "Yes, Fay, I still do," before he finally began to kiss me back. I remember that night being one of the most cherished moments of my life, and would change nothing for it. Yet, Despite the incident that brought me so close to dying, I knew in my heart that I yearned to leave Elvia, to continue adventuring once more. One may think it bizarre, but at that moment I left Aranion Gawaeil, I was reminded of my initial travels that brought me here in the first place. It has taken me almost a decade from a near-fatal showdown to recover, but I am now prepared to exit through the shroud and see what has become of our world. Owain deeply disagrees with my decision to leave, but out of his love for me, he won't stop me from going. I also know that should I ever truly find myself in danger, I can use the rune return to come back, regardless of where I might be. From what I've learned from the rangers, visiting helping merchants, and envoys coming from outside, there was not much happening near Shaloran lands. Being unable to exact control over their lands as they once did, the Nargles have mostly ended their patrols on the roads leading towards Elvia. Lawless bands of humans now roam the nearby countryside, some driven to banditry by their hopeless situations, others just seeing an opportunity to take what they will. What little interaction we have with the outside world is made even more difficult as a result. It is believed that a major hideout and staging area for those rogues can likely be found within the old forest. Rumors of the Ziggurat were also abound, as were the heinous atrocities that they committed. Trained bands of our anti-magic warriors scoured the lands for any who cast spells or were in possession of items powered by the arcane. It is believed that they are influencing the politics of many human kingdoms and the elder halflings, though in the Nargle lands they instead still employ those continual bring events to get their message across. Curiously, there is speculation about some ogres playing among their ranks, though how such a thing is possible I don't know. If confronted by them, I would have a difficult fight on my hands to be sure. It has been over half a century though. Perhaps they may have forgotten about me after all this time passing. Outside the various movements of such distasteful groups, the Shaloran researchers believe there may also be something worth checking out. The most prevalent mark of destruction left by the Spellblaze can likely be found along the blackened shoreline to the east of Elvia. The primary path the destructive energies took is reasoning that a better understanding of the Spellblaze's effects can be attained by surveying the area. However, the Shaloran know that venturing out past the Shroud would be dangerous for them, due to the aforementioned Ziggurat, but also just how hazardous those lands are, in and of themselves. Despite the dangers, it is important to note just what sort of lasting damage has been done to our world, and how we might be able to help alleviate Elvia's pain. I won't be discouraged from leaving Elvia because of the clash I lost with the Necromancer. Now I set off from his place and I call home. Yet, you can be sure, Wayne, that to be within your arms will be the first thing I seek when I return. There are people who need help, villainous schemes to be thwarted, and an arc book of my escapades to be written. I will be cautious in where adventure I pursue in the outside world. All I ask is that you wait for me, my dear husband. At the bottom of this page, there appears to be a message scribbled in the margin. Commendations to the author. I'll be sure to enjoy reading your last escapades that you will write, should I ever come across you. And that basically ends the Fay Willows escapades. Hope you guys all enjoyed it, and take care.